Hello Earth System Science, welcome to your weekly agenda video for September 14th, 2020. This is the week where we will move out of our introduction unit. We will present our STEM challenges to our small groups, and then we're going to move into our first Earth System Science unit, which is going to be about local water. So I'm going to explain all that. Most of what we do is going to be occurring synchronously this week in class. This video is meant to make sure that if people miss those class times, they won't be so far behind that they don't know what to do. And so most, again, of what we're doing is going to be in class, small groups, or after I deliver some information, individual work. But this is the video. So here we go. 3 things on the agenda, 2 of which will definitely be graded. The first is the STEM challenge presentations in your small group. Okay, and so I'll be going over this in class, but in short, everyone's going to be taking turns sharing their screen and going through all of their challenge slides. Okay, what you have to do as a group member, you will have your own copy of this document called Challenge Presentations. You are going to be recording down your group member's name, the challenge that they chose, right? Whether or not it was the bridge or the tower or the catapult or whatever. What their results were, just short little bullet point, right? Whether or not their hypothesis was confirmed or not. And then as a group, you're going to ask that person a question. And then you're going to have their response recorded. Okay, and then at the bottom, after you've seen everything, maybe choose the one, answer this question about which one you choose next. This will be graded. Everyone's in charge of writing down their other group members' information. You don't have to record your own. Okay, so that is the first thing we do this week. That'll take place on the first day of the week that we meet. The other 2 items are things that I'm going to get into at the second half of the week. Okay, the second time we meet, I'm going to introduce our first unit, which is going to center on water in Fort Collins, or local water. Okay, it's part of our hydrosphere larger unit, hydro meaning water, which can exist obviously as a liquid, a vapor, or a solid, ice, and it is contained underground, surface, and air. This week, we are going to be diagramming our local watershed's water cycle. Okay, and so I'm gonna go over all of these pieces of information in class. So I'm not going to go into detail right now. The first unit is going to cover these 4 things. Okay, this week we're going to get into whatever the hydrologic or water cycle is locally. But in this unit, we'll also talk about where our water comes from. We'll be talking about what water quality is, why that's important, and then we're going to talk about how wildfires can affect our water, okay, specifically the Cameron Peak fire. So we're going to have this driving question through this unit. How does the Cameron Peak fire affect our local water quality? Okay. And then as far as a activity or assignment this week, again, we'll be working on it in class, but your goal is to bring and make sure that you have a sheet of paper, a separate sheet of paper. Not the first, we're hopefully going to remind you to bring paper on the second time we meet. You don't need it on Monday, Tuesday, but you will need it on Wednesday, Thursday, because you're going to be diagramming Fort Collins's hydrologic cycle. Okay, and so you may have done this in middle school before. We're essentially making a water cycle drawing, but we're going to apply it to where we live, Fort Collins, right? And so the directions on a separate sheet of paper, draw a detailed diagram of our local hydrologic cycle with labels. You're going to use the resources that I've attached to this document to help guide you, which means that if you don't know what something is, you'll have to look it up to kind of understand it, because you're going to use those on the back side of your diagram to draw, or rather, to write how a molecule of water would potentially work its way through the cycle. Okay? And then in order to get credit, you're going to be taking a picture of your assignment front and back, and then uploading that to Google Classroom. These are the labels. You'll need to label the city of Fort Collins, our mountains, Rocky Mountains, our Horsetooth Reservoir, the Cache la Poudre River, and then evaporation, melting, condensation, freezing, sublimation, precipitation, land, infiltration, groundwater, and runoff. Okay, you will have to color it in some way. It doesn't have to be overly fancy if you don't have colored pencils, but again, we're going to hopefully remind you to have those items with you the second half of the week. It's got to look good, and the total is going to be 32 points. So a decent sized assignment. Here are some resources which will be available to you. Here's a classic water cycle drawing, complete with the arrows of what's going on. So most of these labels here are given to you. The other resource is slightly more detailed. Not all of these things are necessary on your drawing. This is just another way of looking at maybe how to lay out your own hydrologic cycle. I did a very, very poor example sketch in about 2 minutes of how you could start laying out your own drawing, right? Yours should be better than this. This is something that I was just kind of brainstorming on, but this is where I put the mountains, put kind of a little runoff to Horsetooth Reservoir. This is the Cache la Poudre River. These would all be colored, and these are missing all of the labels, but here's the town. This line here is underground, meant to mean underground because you will have to add it. And so that was supposed to be sort of this idea, which I realize is going to be challenging, but I think most of us can rise to that challenge. So that's an idea, including some of our local things. You don't have to make it look exactly like this. Any way you can get on the required labels is fine. Again, on the back side, you'll have to write out how water would move through it. Example, maybe I'm a water molecule in a Horsetooth Reservoir. When the temperature gets warm enough, I evaporate. I go into the atmosphere and form clouds. Out of those clouds, I then fall as precipitation in the mountains, which then runs down through the Cache la Poudre River and eventually makes its way to the ocean. And that's enough, right? I'm looking for you to think about how water cycles through our watershed. Okay. Other things this week. I think that is the assignment. I think it should take some time. It's not a simple drawing. I want everyone to do as good as possible on it. Again, we will be going over these directions in class and reminding you to have a piece of paper, pencils, colored pencils ready for the second part of this week. But if you're unable to make it, hopefully this video gave you a little bit of a idea of what's going to be due this coming Sunday. As always, email if you have questions on something, but I'll see you guys in class.